Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where I can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 60 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, and today's episode is on how to cope with stress. So I know that I've done another episode on this in the past, but as the UK goes into lockdown, I thought that'd be really good to remind people like how to cope with the difficult times, how to cope with negative thoughts. So hopefully you will find this episode really useful. So moving on to the psychology news section. So we're in from the British Psychological Society Research Digest, and there's some good articles here. So the first one is, people use jargon to make up for their low standing in a group. Why do business people promise to reach out to KOLs? I have no idea what that means. When they could simply say that they will contact leading experts. How come judges sometimes remark that they will hear trials in Canberra instead of just in private? As infuriating as it can be, jargon actually performs a social function. By definition, jargon refers to language used by a particular group of people in the place of more accessible words and phrases, and although that can make it frustrating and confusing for people not in that group, if you're a member of the group, then it can help signal to others that you belong. People may also use jargon as a way of displaying their expertise, but according to a new series of studies, those who are of low status within a group are also predispositioned towards jargon-filled language. The team finds that these people appear to want to compensate for their own lowly position, I'm not even sure if lowly is a real word, by a language that is often associated with higher status. So this I completely and utterly agree with it, because by using certain language, for example, social identity theory, cognitive dissonance, etc., we know that we belong to the group of the psychology people. And as broad as that group is, though, because we know this specialist language, then we know that we belong as a part of that group. And also for the author community, which I'm a part of, because I use certain language, for example, wide author, save the cat scene, which I fully admit none of you would know about, simply because that's not your language, but that's my jargon language in the author community. Yes, that I completely agree with. This next one should be quite interesting. So, men who sleep less are seen as more masculine, a stereotype with potentially damaging consequences. There are some curious cultural ideas around sleep, namely that there's something virtuous or impressive about not getting very much fit. Burnout is often shorthand for success. If you're successful, it follows that you're pretty busy, in which case you're less likely to get enough sleep. Margaret Thatcher famously boasted that she only needed 4 hours sleep a night, as does Donald Trump, though whether that boasts or damages the prestige associated with a sleepless night probably depends on your politics. So there may also be links between sleep and perceptions of masculinity. The new paper finds that not only do we associate sleep deprivation with masculinity, but that men who sleep less actually experience more favourable social judgments than their better rested counterparts. But if this sleep-deprived masculinity stereotype leaves men to sleep less, their physical and mental health could suffer. So, but the thing to take away from this news section is, men, I know there's quite a small number of men who've listened to this podcast, but men, please just sleep. You're not, to be honest, I really do not understand this as stereotype, because yes, you might be busy, but if you're busy and if you don't get enough sleep, then you're going to do your busy stuff worse off, and it won't be as a good a quality, meaning you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So please get enough sleep, everyone, and this goes for women as well. Everyone, just get enough sleep. So I hope you've enjoyed the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. So there's not a great amount of stuff to say this week, except I've had some really interesting lectures which I'm not really going to go over too much, except from I had this really, really dense child development lecture on adolescence, and I've got so much information, and I've actually looked into some of it myself. So I've actually got some additional pages of research, and To be honest, I think this is going to be an entire section in the next developmental psychology books. I'm really looking forward to that. And I honestly felt as if I had some more important stuff to tell you, but a point of interest. Yesterday, I actually decided to apply for some psychology worker placements, and some of them are actually really interesting. And then I've also got some other ones I'm applying for this afternoon. It's some of them that I've applied for include Broadmoor Hospital, which is quite a notorious one in the UK because it's a high security psychiatric hospital. So basically, it's sort of a mental health hospital, and it's quite an infamous one. Yes, that one's quite interesting. It's a bit far away, but it's interesting and is a bit prestigious. Then I'm also applying for this cleft lip one at the St Thomas's, which is a really prestigious hospital in the UK because it helps the people that have cleft lip, which is I don't know how to describe it, but basically it's when your lips not formed properly, and because of that, it actually leads to a lot of psychological, cognitive, behavioural, and emotional difficulties, because people get bullied about it. So it'd be interesting about helping them. So that's actually it sounds quite interesting. And then the only other interesting thing this week is that last night I finished Garrow Book 9, and Garrow End of Days. Really happy with the story. I absolutely loved it. So that's probably coming out next year. Next year at some point. But it was a great way to wrap up the Garrow series. So now that series is completely done, and now I can move on to some other fiction. But next week I'm really looking forward to because on Monday I'm interviewing our great guest for next week's episode of the Psychology Word podcast. I'm so excited about talking to this person, and I've been finalising the questions last week, and I've been talking to her, and I think it's such a great episode. You're going to learn so much, and it's just going to be great. So I'm really am looking forward to that. And as always, you can always contact me to see your thoughts and feelings and comments on the show. You can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-whiteley, and you can always leave a comment on the show notes at connorwhiteley.net. And the sponsored product for today's episode is Developmental Psychology 2nd Edition. And this is a great book because it really breaks down the topic of developmental psychology into a really easy to understand and engaging way, because it goes into cognitive development, brain development, how attachment forms, and all the different types of attachment. And it also goes into how culture can impact development, which I thought was really interesting. And then it also goes into how the different senses develop, and it goes into so much, but it's still really easy to understand. People enjoy it, and this is a great book that I highly recommend. So that is Developmental Psychology 2nd Edition. You can find it on all major ebook retailers like Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, etc. And you can get to the print book on Amazon, and that's the large print and the paperback version. Yes, that's enough of the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about ways to deal with negative thoughts and feelings. So some of these I've already mentioned in previous episodes, but I'm going to leave those ones towards the end of the episode, and then we're going to introduce the new ones first. So the first one is look for positives. I don't think I've actually said this and actually elaborated on this before, but yes, we're going into lockdown, and yes, in other parts of the world there is uncertainty, but for all the bad there are positives, which I think is a bit, I don't know, because you definitely have to think about it in a certain way. So lockdown, yes, it's bad. Yes, it's bad because we're away from our friends and family, works have been disrupted. I really don't know your personal circumstances. Just as a side note, my thoughts and feelings are with all of you, and I really hope that all of you are okay, wherever you are in the world. So yes, lockdown's bad, but you've got to admit there are a few positives. So, for example, we're all home with our family. Well, if you live with them. For example, because my mum's not back, I get to see her a bit more. Yes, and also one of my mum's friends there. She's lost all of her work because of lockdown, so she cannot work for a month. Or to be honest, I cannot see us coming out of lockdown on the 2nd of December, which I think is a massive shame. But I think that's just how life is, sadly. But she decided to look for the positive because she's been meaning to do her garage for years. She's been meaning to clean it out and actually make it usable. And I remember the first time she said that, and I was probably about 10. And I'm 19 now, so almost a decade she's been saying, was this second lockdown? She's actually going to clear it out. Well, she plans to, at least. So it's just that sort of like positive thinking. And also from my own personal like experience, I'm taking this as a slight positive because from a business point of view, people are going to be like at home, meaning that I can hopefully write a few more books for people to enjoy, and the entire point of this is just try and provide people with a bit of like a escape for a few hours from the craziness of the world. But it also gives me some time to actually focus on like other stuff. So for example, like online university stuff, because there's not a set time for it because it's all online. Then that gives me a lot more flexibility, and that would not have happened if there wasn't a lockdown, and also if there wasn't online learning at like university. So just small things like that. I know it's hard, but just try and get a bit creative with how you think about the positives. So another one is what you're feeling is temporary. So this one I know is a bit weird, but all of our emotions are temporary. Everything in life is temporary. Remember what I said last week, which is probably not going to be that helpful in like today's episode about memento mori. Our life's temporary. We're going to die. But the great thing about this though is that everything is a temporary, meaning our feelings are also like quite temporary. So for example, if we're feeling sad, depressed about the lockdown or anything else that's happened in the world, then we need to like think about that. This will just last for a month or two. Yes, I'm being hopeful there, but everything is a temporary, and we just need to focus on that there is something after this. There is something after lockdown. There is something after this anger and this upset and this sadness that we're feeling. So everything is temporary, and you just need to focus on what the future could be. So another one is don't judge yourself for feeling this way. I will fully admit I've been through this sometimes, and this is really quite unhealthy, but we get so annoyed that we're annoyed and that we're angry, and it actually makes the problem worse. So please just, when you're feeling, but there's a great way that I found that's actually does this a bit. So when I get really annoyed or sad, I just sort of like sit down. I tend to just sit on my bed, etc., or I just do something, and I literally just go to myself, right, Connor, what's wrong? Why are you feeling this way? And then usually it takes a minute or two for me to actually figure out why I'm feeling like this way, and then I make a decision about how am I going to like avoid this in the future, and how am I going to like fix it now. So for example, to be honest, I'm not going to say the actual personal examples because they are really personal, but let's say that I was really annoyed and upset about lockdown, then I would go, right, so I'm sad because of lockdown. How am I going to change this? Well, I would probably start by being annoyed at the government, but again, this is not a political show. Yes, and then what I would do is that I would probably think, right, so this is temporary. It's only going to happen for a few months, and I'm actually going to focus on what I do have. So, for example, I still have my health, I still have my parents, I still have my brother, and it's just like stuff like that. You just, again, this comes back to the positives. So just, and then I want to quickly run through some other ones that I've mentioned on previous episodes. So again, write about this, journaling it, processing your emotions on paper, actually writing what you feel down. I fully admit that is a great way. It's helped me a lot in certain situations. Exercise, it has tons of research behind it saying that it's a great way to relieve stress and just like relax, and it's great for mental health. Social support, don't be scared to ask your friends and family for help. Self-compassion, I know I feel like I've done an entire episode on this before, but in a short, like in case you're newer to it, welcome by the way. I hope you're all enjoying the show. So self-compassion, just be kind to yourself. Just allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Again, don't judge yourself, and just be kind to yourself. Don't punish yourself. Don't be annoyed at yourself. Just be nice to yourself. Yes, and then that's all what the idea is. Yes, I really hope that this has helped you on today's episode. Hopefully you will feel better. And again, lockdown is just temporary, and wherever you are in the world, hopefully you and your families are safe and sound. Okay, so as always, I would love to know your thoughts and feelings. You can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net, leave a comment on the show notes at connorwhiteley.net, and you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-whiteley. And next week we are talking to our absolutely brilliant guest. I'm so looking forward to actually announcing who she is. I'm just so looking forward to it. So have a great day everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.